In this video, we will learn to recognize two essential functional groups, that is, amines and amides. We will also learn some examples of molecules that have these types of functional groups, and we'll learn about some of the roles of these molecules. For example, the reason why we're showing an image of the brain and some neurons here is because of the importance of these functional groups as neurotransmitters. We'll get into that just a bit later. Now let's take a look at how we can efficiently distinguish between a molecule that has an amine functional group and one that has an amide functional group. This is essential to be able to recognize the difference between these two because the two different functional groups will have different types of reactions that they are capable of undergoing and very different biological functions. The amine group is recognized as a nitrogen atom that is bonded to carbons or hydrogens. The R group here represents some combination of carbons and hydrogens. It could be 2 hydrogens and 1 carbon. It could be 2 carbons and 1 hydrogen, or it could be 3 carbon atoms. It doesn't matter for the molecule to be classified as an amine. For a molecule to be classified as an amide, what we will recognize is that the nitrogen atom is directly connected to a carbonyl, as I'm highlighting here in yellow. This is what makes an amide an amide. So when you're looking at molecules and trying to distinguish whether you are seeing an amine functional group or an amide group, be on the lookout for a direct connection between a nitrogen and a carbonyl. If you see that, automatically classify the molecule as an amide. If you see any other pattern where the nitrogen is not directly connected to a carbonyl, instead classify the molecule as an amine. When we are working with amines, we can dig a bit deeper and classify the amine functional group as primary, secondary, or tertiary. The classification of an amine group is based on the number of carbon atoms that are directly connected to the nitrogen, where if the nitrogen is directly connected to just 1 carbon and the rest are hydrogens to fill the complete octet of the nitrogen, we refer to that amine as a primary amine. Primary meaning 1. There is 1 carbon atom directly connected. So I call that a primary amine, or as I've put it here, a 1-degree amine, as a way of abbreviating that. A secondary amine will have instead 2 carbon atoms directly bonded to the nitrogen, and as a result, then to fill the octet, just 1 hydrogen atom. We classify that as a secondary amine, which we can also abbreviate as a second-degree amine. Finally, an amine in which we have a nitrogen atom directly connected to 3 carbon atoms and no hydrogens will be referred to as a tertiary amine. We will use this language to describe these molecules, and in some cases, the reactions that these are capable of undergoing and their physical properties will be determined by whether they are primary, secondary, or tertiary. And so it's important to be able to recognize and distinguish between these 3 types of different amine groups. Let's go ahead and get some practice at both classifying functional groups as amines versus amides, and as classifying amines as primary, secondary, or tertiary. Here are some examples of molecules that are recognized as common neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, adrenaline, which results in the fight or flight response, glycine, GABA, serotonin, histamine, which results in allergic reactions, hence why antihistamines are molecules that relieve allergic reaction symptoms, and a variety of others. In each of these, we are going to classify the amine as primary, secondary, or tertiary. We first need to be able to recognize that amine functional group, so we're going to go ahead and circle the amine group in each of these molecules and classify it. In the adrenaline molecule, we see we have our nitrogen atom here. That's the only nitrogen in the molecule, so that's the only candidate for where there could be an amine group present. We notice that this nitrogen is not directly connected to a carbonyl. Therefore, we do classify it as an amine and not an amide. I'm going to go ahead and circle it, and I will classify that as primary, secondary, or tertiary based on how many carbons are directly bonded to the nitrogen. The nitrogen atom, in the case of this molecule, is directly connected to 1, 2, carbon atoms, and therefore we would describe this molecule as being a secondary amine. So I'm going to put second degree amine there to recognize this molecule. Over to the next one, noradrenaline. Relatively closely related to adrenaline, you will notice the major difference between the two structures, the absence or presence of this methyl group that I'm highlighting here in adrenaline is missing over here in noradrenaline. And as a consequence of that, what was a secondary amine in adrenaline becomes a primary amine in noradrenaline. It is a primary amine because of the fact that that nitrogen atom is directly bonded to only one carbon atom. We can highlight that here, the nitrogen directly connected to just one carbon atom, making it a primary amine. Same thing with dopamine. Dopamine is another common example of a primary amine because we have our NH2 group here. When there are two hydrogens directly bonded to the nitrogen, that only leaves one space open for a carbon to be bonded. As a result, there's only one carbon-nitrogen bond, and we refer to that as a primary amine. The same is going to be true for glycine with a primary amine, GABA, which stands for gamma-aminobutyric acid. Glutamic acid has this primary amine group that I've just circled. Aspartic acid also has a primary amine group. So all of these structures here that I'm bracketing off, we would classify as all having primary amine groups. Serotonin fits into that category as well. It has a primary amine because it has that NH2 group. Histamine has an NH2 group as well. And you'll notice that these molecules have very different functions, with serotonin functioning as a regulator of mood, histamine functioning as a mediator of allergic reactions. So while they both have that amine functional group, their biological function is very different and driven by some of the other groups that are present within the molecule. Taurine, shown here, sometimes used as a nutritional supplement, is a primary amine. And then N-acetyl aspartyl glutamate, taking a look at that structure, this one's a little tricky because this one actually does not have any amine groups in it. Instead, what it has are an amide group here. So don't try to classify that as a primary, secondary, or tertiary amine because that is instead an amide since there's a carbonyl directly bonded to the nitrogen. And there's also a second amide group here which I can box off as a carbonyl directly bonded to a nitrogen, making that classified as an amide as well. And then acetylcholine is a unique example of a molecule that, although it contains a nitrogen atom, you'll notice that it actually has 4 bonds to the nitrogen and a positive formal charge, making it a cation, which actually puts it into a category of its own. We will get into positively charged nitrogens and their roles in a later video. Let's take a look at another example. In this example, what we will do is label all of the amine or amide functional groups in this compound, oxytocin, which is known as the love hormone because it is thought to play a role in bonding and connection between mother and child while the mother is breastfeeding, and is also thought to play a role in other types of bonding amongst humans. So taking a look at this molecule, oxytocin, looking for nitrogen atoms will help us identify regions of the molecule where there is either an amide group or an amine group. So I start over here at the left-hand side of the molecule. I have an NH2 directly bonded to a carbonyl. So we would refer to that as an amide group with the DE ending, denoting that there is a carbonyl directly bonded to a nitrogen. We have another amide group right here because we have a nitrogen directly bonded to a carbonyl. We have another amide group right here, nitrogen directly bonded to carbonyl. Another one here, you're maybe picking up the trend here, another here, another one here, another one here. This has a lot of amide functional groups. And I will tell you as a preview for the next chapter that we have only just begun in looking at these amide bonds because amide bonds are what are going to be used to link individual amino acids together to ultimately form proteins as the product of those reactions. So oxytocin is very much a small protein is how we could think of it because of the fact that it is built from so-called amino acid building blocks in these amide groups as the main organization of the molecule, the main bond that links the individual building blocks together to form this molecule, much like proteins have as well, except that proteins are a much larger structure of these amide bonds linked together. Now, everything I've highlighted in yellow is an amide group. I do notice in this molecule, I'm going to highlight it in red, is this group, an NH2, and that NH2 is not directly connected to a carbonyl carbon. The carbonyl carbon would need to be right here where my laser pointer is for it to be classified as a amide. So instead, this group we would refer to as an amine, specifically a primary amine. One other fun example that will remind us of the importance of amine and amide functional groups and give us some more practice at recognizing these is the molecule known as glucosamine. Now, the name of this molecule, having the amine suffix, kind of gives it away, to be completely honest. This is the structure of glucosamine. You'll notice that it looks very much like a cyclic sugar, glucose, hence the glucose portion of the name. And then the amine part of the name is derived from the fact that rather than having a hydroxy group at this position that I'm circling in blue that would make it a typical sugar, glucose, instead, the hydroxy group has been replaced with an amine group, hence why this takes on the suffix amine. Now, glucosamine is a common dietary supplement. It is generally marketed as a supplement that supports the structure and function of joints and has commonly been marketed to people with arthritis as a remedy. It is not a prescription drug. It's something sold over the counter at a variety of health food stores and nutritional supplement stores, with some research backing that it is perhaps likely effective at treating arthritis. So it has been commonly used. Now, with all of these examples of amines and amides, we are ready to go into the next videos where we will take a closer look at such topics as how we go about naming these molecules, recognizing additional subtype of amines called heterocyclic amines, and looking at physical and chemical properties of amines and amides.